is the 40th anniversary of Ronnie James Dio's Holy Diver album coming out.
Oh wow!
And that's a big deal because he brought Sabbath, like I did in a post. He brought Sabbath to platinum status, and then him and Ami got into it, which I think was a bad move on Ami's part.
Oh,
Because
absolutely! Oh my God! Think of if Dio, instead of breaking off on his own, had just stayed with
and Dio
Sabbath
was
and
that,
ran
and
that
Dio
run
was that
out.
guy too. He was definitely that guy. He didn't want to leave Rainbow,
Let,
but
let
he
me
didn't
ask
want.
you. Let me ask you a question then. If that let's since we're in this alternate universe, let's explore for a minute. Let's say that Ronnie James Dio stays with Black Sabbath. Does Black Sabbath begin to have the same or continue the success that they had at the beginning of it and actually eclipse Ozzy and
No,
Ozzy's solo work?
no, I don't think they do that. But I think that they definitely ride the whole '80s with platinum albums and rival
Oh
what
yeah,
Ozzy's doing.
yeah. Because Dio's band, in a lot of ways, was more modern and had that edge, a different edge than Sabbath. That was more modern, and he had his own pyrotechnic guitarist and Vivian Campbell. Holy Diver and Last in Line, in my opinion, are metal statements. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
those are both platinum albums.
But you
Oh
want
yeah.
to talk about originators of rock and roll, though? Ronnie James Dio was in a fucking doo wop
He
band
was in the
back in the
doo wop
late
band.
50s.
That's right. I have an album of Elf. I have the album Elf.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Yep.
yeah. That's actually it's rock and roll, but it's kind of throwback rock and roll. It's got the ding 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 piano like from the '50s,
Yeah.
but that was early '70s, and that's really what started putting him on the map.
Yeah, but he was early '60s too. He there's a couple singles that he was on throughout the '60s with greaseback hair and stuff like that.
Yep.
They
Completely different scene. I mean, completely different scene than what we saw from him in Black Sabbath in the early 80s.
You know what
And then,
killed
of
Black
course,
Sabbath with Dio was the release uh, of Speak of the Devil and Live Evil at the same time. And the problem with Live Evil was the production was horrible. It's too bassy, and it just didn't sound good. Whereas Speak of the Devil was an over the top sounding live album that had been heavily processed and redubbed in the studio, right? So it
yeah.
was slick. It felt like, even though it wasn't Randy Rhoads, it was Brad Gillis. It felt slick and modern. And it just on your it just Live Evil just didn't sound good, which is awful because it had a great set list on it and could
Well,
start with.
and this right here could be another podcast for another day too. But truthfully, that's where they came to blows. It was actually Dio left the band before Live Evil came out.
Mm.
Because he didn't want to
There
sell
there
it.
was
He
fight
sounded
there were
bad.
fights. There were fights over that. Dio was trying to come in and do some mixing on it, and Ami basically comes in one day and says, "You're done. You don't do any mixing. I'll be doing the fucking mixing." And the product you hear is what Ami
Do
came
you
up with.
think that he might have had a little bit of white on his mustache there when he was making that pronouncement?
Oh, absolutely. Dio said that,
Absolutely.
and that's another thing. He could not deal with those guys because they were on drugs so bad
Oh
that
yeah.
you could not use logic in your conversations.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Gil was very logical. He was a spiritual guy, man. He was deep. I mean, if you couldn't, get deep with him, he didn't like it. That's why he was better off on his own. And even though those are two of the greatest metal albums of all time, in my opinion, top 25 anyway, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, the stuff that he was able to do solo, he could go deeper than that if he
Yep.
wanted to. And really, the best stuff he ever did, if you ask me, for Dio, the power of it, the majesty of it, was Stargazer with Rainbow. To me,
Oh,
that's
absolutely. That's an awesome song.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable, man. I mean, that's see, metal went in two directions, right before the '80s, right? And Rainbow was one direction with keyboards and so forth, right? And it would have kept on rocking, in my opinion, had they not went back to Deep Purple, right? So
Right.
so Deep Purple comes out, it's pretty much the same thing as Rainbow with better keyboard player at Ian Gillan, and it was a great reunion. But in my opinion, if Dio had kept rocking, Dio didn't want to compromise on his musical principles and stuff like that. He didn't want to do a bunch of pop, and Richie Blackmore wanted to do pop, so he goes to Black Sabbath. But he gets there, he thinks it's a serious band. He transforms the band and makes it better than the last two or three Ozzy Black Sabbath albums. So he
Oh
gets
yeah,
there.
Ozzy had hit rock fucking bottom.
Oh yeah,
He really had.
in my opinion, Never Say Die and a
He
technical.
hit bottom so bad that he wound up marrying Sharon.
You
Yeah.
know what? Let's go ahead and go and announce it. That's coming. It's got to be coming in the next month or so. Is we got to do a Sharon Osbourne episode.
Oh yeah, we got
Oh
to.
man, we
we
can
can
sit and talk for hours just on people that she's interacted with. That it, she is
that are still trying to get their money.
By
either
all
still
human
trying to
beings.
get their money or still trying to get some kind of satisfaction after she was able to pull a fast one on them and pretty much tell them, what are you going to do about it?
I believe
Yep.
for 20 years that Tommy Aldridge was the drummer on Diary of a Madman.
Oh, he's not, is he?
No, it's Lee Kerslake, but he's got the
Yeah,
credit
yeah.
on it. I've got the original album that I bought in 1982. I can pull it out and look at it right now. It says Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo when it was Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley. You know,
Yep.
That sounds like a lawsuit. Somebody got a lawsuit and they got
No,
that thing.
nobody ever is able to pull this shit off in court.
oh they did.
She's well prepared when she goes to court.
And what
Yeah.
they did was they released a new CD of Diary of a Madman, right? That had Mike Gordon and the Trujillo and as the playing the parts, and they mixed it over the original Randy Rhoads guitars of the original vocals, right? And then they released it for about 10 years at Walmart. The one that had a little tiny picture of Diary of a Madman in the middle, and the outside of it was green and said "Ozzy." Right? So they sold
Uh,
that, and they sold that for 10 years with it trying to cut them out of getting their money. In other words, by having Mike Gordon and Trujillo, who is now the bassist of Metallica, on there and remixing with them playing those parts. So the people like me were outraged, right? Because in my opinion, Diary of a Madman is the greatest metal album ever made, period. Right? And to me, it's sacrosanct and they should have never touched it. But they eventually re-released it in its original glory. So.
You are listening to the Balls Out Podcast. Make sure to give us a thumbs up, comment, share and subscribe so that you can help this podcast grow.